Welcome to Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public.
Hi everyone, today we have with us Antonija Grubisic-Cabo, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden. Hi Antonija, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me here. I'm doing well. What about you?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to hearing about your science, especially because I feel that it's related to my science, so let's get cracking. So let's start by understanding your research. So could you explain your research in super simple words to us, please?
So I'm studying 2D materials, and basically we all live in a 3D world. And if you just imagine like a book, the single sheet of paper, like the topmost, leaf of paper, part of paper, is just the surface. And that's what my materials are. It's just the surface, and they're usually just 1 or 2, 3 atomic layers thin.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm doing with these materials is I'm looking into their electronic properties, basically whether they're metals, semiconductors, or something completely different, because these 2D materials are so different from our world that their electronic properties are.
Okay, first of all, that sounds so fascinating because my PhD work and master work was also with 2D materials, so it was about graphene. So what kind of 2D materials do you work with?
So I've actually also worked a lot with graphene.
Uh-huh.
So I worked with graphene, and now I work more with materials called transition metal dichalcogenides.
Uh-huh.
So tungsten and molybdenum disulfide.
Uh-huh.
I've never worked with selenides, which are more popular though, and some other TMDCs, as I like to call them, such as platinum ditellurides and some more metallic substrates recently.
Uh-huh. Okay. And do you also do the stacking or do the sandwiching, the fancy sandwiches, or is it more individual 2D materials that you work with?
So it's more like individual materials, but I have friends who can stack these materials for me. I'm actually terrible with a sticky tape, I must say.
Oh yeah, the sticky tapes are fun, right? To create these materials.
It's a lot of fun, but my flakes were always small compared to my colleague she can make really nice ones, but mine were always tiny, so she's the expert. I'm not.
I didn't know that there was talent in exfoliating as well. I always thought it's just matter of luck.
There are some tricks, and then there's some, keep your fingers crossed that it's going to work. So I think it's also a lot of skill, how much you press the tape or how quickly you pull it.
Right. And I remember we used to heat up the substrate that you would exfoliate on to clean it and make it more attractive for the 2D material to stick on. A few tricks that I remember from my research time.
Yeah, there's quite a few tricks. Luckily, I have friends who can do this for me, but I also mostly work on somewhat bigger crystals, so some that are also just grown. So I used to grow graphene on different metals, and then you can have, it's 1 atomic layer thin, but it's a centimeter square in, the area. So that's much easier to find with a microscope and with spectroscopy that I use.
Right, instead of going like by just moving the microscope stage and being like, okay, where is my flake? Yeah, I agree. The growing the chemical vapor deposition or any other method, those I think mine also are favorite because it makes more sense to me. There is very little amount of luck compared to the exfoliation.
And easier to find.
Yeah. All right, super. So, Antonia, it sounds like there would be a lot of science and a lot of interesting 2D material science coming in the week that you will curate the account. So, could you talk a little bit about what can the followers expect in the week that you will take over the RealSci_Nano Twitter account?
So, I like to talk a bit about, physics of 2D materials, because sometimes I feel that physics get gets a bad rep compared to, chemistry and biology because we're not so cool and fun. So I'd like to share a few things that I really find exciting about these materials. So I'd like to tell a bit about 2D materials, different way of how we can make them, and also how we can measure them. And I'm planning to talk a bit about synchrotrons because a lot of my research is done on synchrotrons. So I'd like to tell a bit about, experiments you can do there and experiments I've done there. And also a bit about outreach and science communication, such as this, because I quite like talking about my science, and I think everybody should talk about their science if they're excited about it. And also a bit about collaborations. A lot of research I do is done in large collaborations and sometimes also interdisciplinary, which I think is super cool. So I'd like to tell a bit about that.
Okay, so it's going to be an amazing mixture of science and specifically the physics of these nanomaterials and everything that has to do with the other parts of your personality as a scientist, like collaborations, outreach, science communication, all that. That sounds super cool. So very much looking forward to your tweets, Antonija, on the Real Sci Nano Twitter account. Thank you very much for speaking with us. This was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To know more about us, please visit our website, realscientistsnano.org, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.